Option.
Aye.
Fukile Minjani. I'm Fukile. This time I had to make up for my previous.
You're ready now.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
No, lovely, lovely. Good to connect with you again. And yeah, I hope someone is going, stronger and stronger.
Yes, most definitely.
No, lovely. Yeah, it was great since we met at the last webinar. We've been engaging with people. We've been bragging, sharing the experience that we had in terms of the conversation that we had with you. So I thought today maybe we can just have a little bit of a more in-depth conversation about Kurhula and someone. But what has always fascinated me is, you and Stokvel, just, the inspiration part of it, because you should know by now that everybody thinks, oh, Kukwana belong to Stokvel, but what's this inspiration?
Sure. That's actually very interesting. For me, I think it's part of growing up in a Stokvel community. My mother was part of a Stokvel, my aunties were part of Stokvels, even my grandmother was part of a Stokvel, So, I mean, when I was young, I didn't really understand. For me, it just looked like an opportunity to hang out with my cousins and to travel to, other parts of the country to see my family members. So when you're young, you don't really put it together. But then as I grew up, I was like, no, man, I can see firsthand the power that Stokvels have for their members and the communities at large, And as I stepped into the investment space, which I did about 4 years ago, it started to pain me how often Stokvels were taken advantage of, or how often we were missing opportunities because we just didn't know, or no one was offering us those investment opportunities. So I figured, with my experience in the investment space and, my background, having seen how structured Stokvels are and how they can actually be used as investment vehicles. So I tried to merge the two worlds together. I strongly believe, like just in general as people, that whatever skill set we have, that we are actually privileged to have, we should try our best to see if we can share that with other people. So I almost feel it a responsibility of mine to use my skill for something better than just, profits or, it needs to work beyond me. So I figured I'd share it with the Stokvel community.
Great. Before we actually proceed, just in the interest of our viewers, I think I know who Kurhula is. If you could just give us a brief synopsis, who is Kurhula? And I'm going to have my follow-up questions based on what you've just said now.
I'm Kurhula Baloyi. As the name suggests, that's as Tsonga as it gets. Kurhula and Baloyi together is it's so Tsonga.
Proudly Tsonga.
Proudly so. Both sides of my family. So proudly so. Yes. One from Limpopo, one from Soweto, Deep Blue. So bring the two together, and that's where I sort of come along. I was actually born in Soweto as well, Lisedi Hospital, but let's fast forward.
Okay.
I am, an investment professional. I started working in the asset management industry for 2 of the top 10 asset managers. And it was an interesting experience for me in that you actually learn about investments. And this comes after studying, doing my honors in investment management. I'm currently doing my master's as well, and a lot of my research is actually around how we can use Stokvels as investment vehicles. So this is something that is literally so strongly, I feel so strongly about that, all my papers and my research is around this, because I'm trying to get us to move towards a world where Stokvels are being used as investment vehicles. I've used my educational background and, my background as well in finance, and started Someone Investments in 2020. So that's a little bit about me. I'm currently based in Cape Town now. I moved here back in 2020, around COVID times. So, it's interesting, but I mean, born and raised in Joburg. So Joburg still feels very much like home.
Wow. But with strong ties to back home. I just love the way you've put it together, the urban, rural, Limpopo and Cape Town. I mean, really, you've got it all.
Yeah.
In terms, of South African exposure.
You really see things, especially being Tsonga. I mean, there aren't that many Tsonga people relative to, say, other ethnic groups. So you're exposed to a whole world that doesn't look like you, and you learn, you pick things up everywhere you go. So it's literally been an incredible experience moving around these three provinces, Limpopo, Gauteng, and now the Western Cape. Very
interesting. The interesting thing, Kurhula, is that, without being tribalistic in this conversation, is that from a research perspective, Limpopo is one of the biggest provinces in terms of Stokvel. So there's a huge Stokvel community in Limpopo, very vibrant. I've been there, and, unfortunately, my engagement has been with the grocery Stokvels. They are quite big, which again says, there's a lot of opportunities to actually, grow and nurture that community in terms of doing things better, So I just love the diversity, from your personal background. You've got that urban feel, you've got, that attachment to your background, roots, where you're coming from, and of course, academic, which is also another important thing, because what tends to happen in the Stokvels world, we all know so much about Stokvels, and there's so much that we don't know. That's what I've discovered, And you just mentioned an important point as well, that you've observed that Stokvels are not taken seriously. And I assume the biggest culprits here is the financial institutions, who are actually beneficiaries of the bulk of this Stokvel money that is being saved, But there isn't actually an aggressive, deliberate plan, strategic plan to say that we are going to develop Stokvels, other than just we are going to develop products that we can sell to Stokvels. Yeah. So I think that's what excites me about, just the who Kurhula is, Actually, when we interviewed you for the webinar, I said, oh my good gracious, I think I'm taking a risk here, because there's so many scams that are taking place within the Stokvel space.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start talking investments, people, they want to listen, but there's also a pushback. Just briefly, what is your take about the current situation in terms of scams within the Stokvel space?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. I think that's also one of the reasons why we wanted to become, an investment Stokvel, is because of those problems. It literally pains my heart to see other people being taken advantage of, especially Stokvels, especially people that you find may not know, because there's a lack of financial education, they become more susceptible to scams and people target them. I think them being targeted also shows what a great opportunity it is. People are seeing that there's money there. People are seeing that Stokvels are organized. People are seeing the power and potential of Stokvels. And instead of trying to use that for positive, people are going to use that also negatively. So there's always going to be those two worlds existing. And that's very unfortunate. All I can really say in those kind of situations is for people to try their best to do their research. And you can see that Stokvels are becoming more and more aware. They're doing their research. You're actually sitting down and investigating the product that you're being offered. Who is this company or who is this person? Where are they coming from? And sometimes when things sound too good to be true, it probably is, right? If someone says they're going to double your money in 1 month or whatever in a year, all of these things, sometimes, something is not adding up. So I would just encourage Stokvels to do as much research as they can. Even with us, even before Stokvels give us their money, they do their research. They ask difficult questions. And you must, if you're going to give someone your money, you have every right to know where it's going to be put, when you're going to get it back, and how the whole thing works. So interrogate those companies that are saying, you know, they're going to offer you products and services. Interrogate them. Ask for references as well, like check online, you know, who else has, you know, worked with this company? Maybe you know a friend, maybe you've heard of, you know, some of those things. It helps to do research, not just online, because anyone can put anything online, but also just checking with people in the community. Have you heard of these people? You know, what have they said? And so forth and so forth. But yeah, I mean, it's very unfortunate thing that's happening. And I wish we could say that it won't happen anymore, but people are out there and they're opportunists. So it's just important for us to try and protect ourselves.
Yeah. You've just mentioned that even us, people should check out who is us, who is someone. Yeah.
Yeah.
I now know who Kurhula is. Who is someone?
Yeah. No, people they must check us. They must ask us the questions. Yeah, who is someone? The simplest way of putting it is that we're an investment stokvel, right? It's the way people like to think of it like that, because it's an easy way to understand. What we do is we invest with stokvels in income generating assets. So an income generating asset is an asset that generates income. For example, we invest in delivery bikes, we invest in livestock, we invest in crop farming, and we're constantly looking for other investment opportunities as well. And what we do is we pull the money together from the various individuals, right? Because so often you see that some investments require minimum 10,000, 50,000, all these crazy numbers that a lot of us can't afford. So we bring the money together from all the different stokvels, we purchase assets, and these assets, as they generate an income, we then generate returns for the stokvel members. So the money is split based on members' contributions. And most of our assets are based in township and rural markets, as you can tell, with things like livestock and crops. That's what we do. And yeah, we've been doing it since 2020. We actually started in COVID, very interesting times. And we've been growing strong since then. And one of the reasons why we exist is because I've mentioned this before, is that I've seen firsthand the power that stokvels have to empower communities. And I believe that collectively, we are very, very strong as a people. So if you come together, we can actually help each other generate wealth, rather than if I'm alone and I just have my 500 Rand, it becomes very difficult. But if we have, 100 500 Rands, it becomes a different story. 1,500,000 Rands, it becomes a different story. So, there's literally so much power in working as a collective, and that's what we do.
Yeah, unity is strength indeed.
Yeah.
I think that's the basis of a stokvel, the power of, working together. Coming back to your investment model, what are the key, just basic pointers in terms of analyzing the risk that could be there in terms of investing? Because you collecting money together as a stokvel, and then you take your money, you come to Koko Busi, Kukwana Busi stokvel, and how sure that your investment, you should know better. Maybe your money should be sitting somewhere in Sandton, in the vaults of these big investment companies. Why come to my stokvel and, invest your money? Yeah. How safe it is?
Yeah, no, definitely. Risk is a very big part of investments, and risk management is a very big part of what we do, right? We actually, I won't go into too much detail about this because it can start to get confusing, but we have a risk model. We have a risk model that we use, that I've developed, that we use to measure the risk and the return of our assets. Right. Mm-hmm. So we don't just wake up and decide, okay, today we're going to buy a bike. We would have run the numbers, we would have calculated, we would have investigated. And because we've been doing it for so long, we actually have enough data that we can use to have built that model. So the model helps us in making those decisions. But then also we do our research. If we're going to invest in a bike, what type of bike are we buying? How much is this bike? How much can this bike make? When is it going to make the money? How much is it going to cost to maintain it? How much is it going to cost to insure it? All of those things. So before we even get into an asset, we investigate those things. Which regions are we going to put the bikes? So you actually break down that specific asset into its finer details. So you've answered as many questions as possible, you know, and because we've been doing it for a couple of years now, the questions that we may have not had answers to, or the questions that we may have not asked, we're seeing over time. You know, as you do things repetitively, you get to see the process. So that's what we do. We vet every single asset vigorously. We vet every single partner as well. You know, we're not going to just partner with someone because they say they can do something. We want to see a track record. When did you do it? You know, who else did you do it for? How long have you been doing it? So we have to follow those processes, and we do it every single time. No matter how annoying it gets, we follow the same procedure to make sure that, you know, we've answered all the questions with our assets, with our partners, and then, of course, internally as well. You know, I don't just make the decision sitting here on my own, because there can be a problem with that. You know, what happens if, you know, I make a decision on my own? It's not very good, because, as you say, Stokvels are a community. So you need to involve other people in making decisions to make sure that at every single decision you're making, the Stokvel's best interest is being taken into account. And you're not just making decisions because you're in a bad mood or whatever is the case. So because of that, we have an investment committee that we've set up, right? So before decisions are made, we have to actually consult with the committee. Okay, you know, this quarter, we've decided we're going to buy X amount of bikes and X amount of livestock. You know, can you approve this decision? Does this decision make sense? And that also gives us an extra set of eyes. You know, maybe there's something that I may have missed or someone else in the team may have missed. But when you bring it to, you know, your committee, they can say, you know, is this a good season for this? Is this a good area for this bike? Is this, you know, all of those things. And the nice thing about having a committee is that a lot of them in our committee are way more experienced than we. Like, this is 15, 20 years of industry experience. So it really does support the work that we are doing very well. So we put all of those layers. And then as a final layer, because we actually invest in assets, they have a value. So we can actually insure the assets. So, you know, if all of this has been done and something still goes wrong, which it does, unfortunately, with an asset, like, for example, let's use the bike. If it crashes, I mean, it's raining now outside. If it crashes, if it gets stolen, all of these things, if there's weeks where it cannot operate because it's being maintained, all of those things, you know, we are able to tap into insurance to protect the value of the investments. So we really do try our best, because if you can manage risk, you give yourself a very good opportunity at making good returns, because if you're not managing risk properly, it starts to eat away at the money very quickly. So you need to protect the money first, and then you give the money an opportunity to grow. So yeah, those are some of the things that we do. And it's a very big part of what we do, is managing risk. Even now, there are other assets that we're looking at, but before we throw money there, we are doing research. We're following the same process that we did with these initial assets to make sure that does this thing, you know, can this thing do what we wanted to do? I know for one, when I initially started out, I used my own money to test all of these assets. You know, I used my savings to test, because I didn't want a situation again where I'm using other people's money in things that I've never tried myself. You know, I don't want to take chances with other people's money, because I respect other people's money. And I have seen again how often Stokvels have been burned, and I didn't want to be another person burning Stokvels. So the very first time we ran this thing was as part of my research for my studies. I used my own money. I, you know, bought the assets, I engaged with the partners, and I ran a full cycle. And I was like, okay, this thing can work. You know, now we can bring other people in. I can prove that it can work. It's, you know, maybe just one cycle, but I'm confident it can work. And those kind of things, you know, and being honest with yourself, like, what can we do better? You know, what can we do to manage this better, so that, again, you are allowing the money to work better. You don't just sit and say, yeah, this thing works, it's done. No, you're constantly looking to improve it. You know, if you made 16%, can we make 17 next year? What can we do better? Those sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah, what you just said, Kurhula, it's extremely profound, because one of the challenges for Stokvels in terms of sustainability is the risk exposure. You know, risk not necessarily by being just scammed. It's just how they invest their money. If they do, I mean, even saving, they probably go walk into a bank and just save money, without doing any analysis. So I'm quite actually impressed that risk analysis is one of the important pillars in your Stokvel. And for me, from a Stokvel Academy perspective, if I were to actually appoint you as a professor at the Stokvel Academy, I would request you to write a module on risk.
Yeah, no, it's very important.
Definitely. Definitely, because Stokvel needs to understand, and also protecting your investment. It's one thing to say that I am investing, but how secured is that investment? You've just mentioned insurance. People, the closest that most Stokvels think about Stokvels is should you die?
That's true.
Exactly. So people have got these precious assets that are not protected in terms of insurance. So I'm quite happy that you are actually taking risk seriously. And also another important thing, you mentioned committees. I always, try and highlight to Stokvels and that this is your money. You don't have to be passive and say, Kurhula will see what to do. You see, we all need to be active. You must form subcommittees and also leverage on the different skills that exist within a Stokvel. I'm a marketer, for example. If now we have to go and develop a marketing plan or a marketing strategy for, campaign or project X, I should be the person to go to. If there's someone within a Stokvel who's got expertise in the legal matters, for example, tap into that or try and make your Stokvel as diverse as possible. For me, that is very important because most of the time Stokvels tend to be homogeneous by nature. We are neighbors, we're working together, we are all young, the common denominator, but it doesn't end there. Yeah. So you've mentioned very important, factors that can actually make or break a Stokvel.